Alright, everybody, welcome back. So that's right, Gaijin finally caught on, and one of the most popular event vehicles in recent memory is finally getting moved up in BR after absolutely seal clubbing for this past, month? Almost 2 months at this point? I'm sure most of y'all have experienced this if you've been playing anywhere in this BR bracket, but just in case you haven't, the F-14 has always been a very strong vehicle, very competitive in this matchmaker. To be honest, if you ask me, from its release, the F-14 has always been a bit too low in BR, and that goes for every variant of it. Several things had exacerbated this, even before the Iranian F-14 came, one of which was the recent decompression up to first 13.3 and then to 13.7. So when it was at 13.3, that meant that almost all the higher tier vehicles were getting sucked up. And of course, once 13.7 was introduced, well, the F-14, at least the lower BR ones, could literally no longer see top tier anymore. This all of a sudden meant that now the F-14 was getting a lot more down tiers, fighting much less capable vehicles. Gaijin then proceeded to move the multipath height from 100 meters down to 60 meters, which, don't get me wrong, benefits all these high tier vehicles equally, but the F-14 has always been very focused on that radar kit, which now all of a sudden it's a lot more effective than it was previously. Being that low on altitude now means that if you're trying to multipath these missiles, let's say you get caught out, you're now much more at risk of getting hit by shrapnel from the missile hitting the ground and exploding. And mind you, this has all been talking about the original F-14. The Persian Tomcat was left at the same BR, and then Gaijin decided to go ahead and massively buff its missile kit this update, while of course leaving it at the same BR. Previously, I didn't have a big issue with it being the same BR as the normal F-14A. The IR missiles were worse, it has the AIM-9P instead of the AIM-9H, so less range and overall less capable. The radar missiles, now the Fakour 90, if you ask me, before the buff, I would have said it was better than the Phoenix, but that's just because it was faster and it would get those unsuspecting people killed more often. Because the Phoenix, while it is more agile, is still a relatively easy missile to dodge. And if we were talking pure meta, I'm just trying to have the most capable kit, well, I still would have said the American F-14 was better because I could run 6 AIM-7Fs along with the 2 Sidewinders, and that would have given me much more often, much more guaranteed kills than, firing off Phoenixes or Fakour 90s and hoping that they actually hit. The Persian Tomcat does have the R27R, which if you ask me is better than the AIM-7F, but it has less range, and you still only get 2 of them, so it's another one of those things where it's debatable, right? Well, with the update, the Fakour 90 just became flat out better than the Phoenix. It got bumped all the way up to 20 Gs, which of course is higher than the Phoenix, but the more important thing is they also increase its fin AOA, which means that now the missile can pull harder at those lower speeds and actually reach that 20 Gs when it needs to. So you have a missile which is even more capable of tracking moving targets than it already was, and it wasn't terrible beforehand, and still maintains the absolute ludicrous speed where it will beat every other missile in a joust. So if you fire this thing at somebody in the head-on as they're trying to go at you, they're almost certainly going to die if they try and commit to you. If you lob these off at people like you will with the Phoenix, you have a much higher chance of them actually hitting, because it both gives them less time to react, and the missile also has more energy to use near the end of its life to actually hit targets. This has led to the beginning of a lot of these games of this BR just turning into nothing but Fakour 90s in the kill feed. Because remember, this thing is getting a reasonable amount of down tiers. And even if it's getting, let's say, 13.0 games, that still means it can face tons of stuff like the F4S, for example, which has a pretty bad RWR, of course the same one that you have, but which notably does not give launch warning, or really any warning at all that a missile is coming, besides the fact that it's been locked up. And when a team loses, let's say a quarter to sometimes even a half of their team in the first couple minutes to this Fakour 90 spam, that drastically impacts their ability to actually win a game. And the Fakour 90, while it is the star of the Persian Tomcat, isn't even the missile that got the absolute biggest buff. That will go to the Sedjeel. The maximum G load got increased to 20 Gs, of course, but the big thing is the fact that its fin AOA got more than doubled. If you've seen my missile video, you'll know that that's the actual massive thing here, because even if you increase the G limit of a missile, if it doesn't have the fin AOA to actually pull those Gs, it just simply won't matter. As you saw from the comparison, the difference is absolutely incredible. And honestly, I've been running this over the R27R. Now, I will say, if you're more worried about those close range jousts, you're definitely going to want to run the R27. The Sedjeel is actually incapable of hitting close range shots. The biggest factor in this is that, well, the proximity fuse doesn't even turn on for a whopping 5 seconds after launch. That's compounded by the fact that compared to the R27, it actually takes 3 times longer with it coming off the rail for it to start pulling. And during that time, it is also going much quicker because it has much faster acceleration than the R27. Outside of those close range jousts, however, it's an entirely different story because you have a missile that has solid agility but very good energy, especially at range. And if you're looking for something to do BVR with, I'd argue that for a SAR, this is only second to something like the R27ER, at least in my opinion. My only major gripe with this thing is that as of now, it has copy-paste Sparrow Seeker Head, at least in terms of its chaff resistance and notchability and everything else, which means that it's very easy for someone to just go into the notch real quick, pop some chaff, and then come right back out of it and just easily deal with the missile. Same thing if a target goes cold. A lot of the time, it'll just die and just fly into the ground. You saw that earlier in this video. The R27, on the other hand, has both data link and inertial navigation, so it's much more capable of actually hitting targets. And it's such a shame too, because this missile has so many advantages. Like, it's the only SAR that lofts, as of now at least. And the motor is also incredible. It's just the Seeker kind of lets you down sometimes. I'm going to move on for the differences, but if you want to see them compared, I recommend checking out Jake's recent video on the missile buffs. He does a much more in-depth analysis of the missiles, and especially compares them to other stuff as well. So by this point, you probably should have seen why these missile buffs were such a problem, especially considering the fact that the Tomcat, just the normal Tomcat, was already too strong for the battle rating. Well, Gaijin did finally notice this, and they're moving all the Tomcats up in BR. The F-14B is going up to 13.0, and the F-14As are going to 12.7. Now, if you ask me, after these missile buffs, this thing is now, if you ask me, good enough to go up to 13.0 with the F-14B. Now, do I think the F-14B is better than this? Yes. Do I think it's enough of a difference to justify a different BR, especially considering how stupidly strong these Fakour 90s are at the current moment in the current matchmaker? No, I don't. Unfortunately, I have a feeling that because there's a lot of players getting this thing for the first time that haven't actually played proper jets before, its stats are going to be pretty poor, and so it's just simply not going to change battle rating. In any case, I hope you enjoyed the video. I had a lot of people asking me for the Iranian Tomcat. I just hadn't gotten around to it, and when I saw the BR changes, I knew I just had to go ahead and cover it. I do want to nip one thing in the bud real quick before I go. I do not know when these BR changes are coming. There is a very good chance they're coming either Tuesday or Wednesday this upcoming week. I will keep an eye out for if Gaijin goes ahead and updates them, but I don't want to see a ton of comments of people asking me because I simply do not know. Hope you all have a great day, and peace, y'all.